Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm really thrilled today to have Dominique Shelton-Leipzig here with me to talk about a really important and fascinating issue that she covered in her new book, which is wonderful. This is a great book. I urge you to get it. It's called Trust, Responsible AI Innovation, Privacy, and Data Leadership. And this book focuses on privacy at the C suite level, at the upper management, CEOs, boards of directors, and what they need to know about privacy, AI, and data security. And I haven't seen a book like this yet out there. This is the first of its kind, one really directed to uh, boards and CEOs about these issues. These issues have long been something that privacy professionals have dealt with and has been handled in the privacy office or at the CISO or the CIO. But increasingly, we're seeing that these issues are issues that are being pushed to the top of the top, to the board. And really, there's no one better to talk about this than Dominique. Her career in privacy has spanned decades. She's currently at Mayor Brown and focuses on privacy and cybersecurity there. She has advised the largest companies. She's trained hundreds of thousands of individuals on privacy, and including all California judges on privacy, which is really quite an impressive accomplishment. And I could go on and on. Her list of accomplishments would take up this entire session, but I'll stop there. I really want to delve into the issues in your book. And I guess the first question, just to start, is what motivated you to write this book? How did this book come to be?
So first of all, Dan, thank you. It means so much for me to be on this webinar with you, and especially your leadership, all that you have done in connection and pioneered in connection with privacy and leadership is so important. So I'm particularly thrilled to be here talking with you today. What motivated me to write the book, and 2/3 of it is devoted to artificial intelligence. It's really, most of the book is about that, as well as privacy and cyber. But what motivated me is to make sure that we realize how much humans have control over outcomes as it relates to data, and the important role that CEOs and boards play in protecting the brand. Because so many of the issues that we're seeing with data have brand implications that where there are divergences between what is happening with respect to the data and the brand that the company has worked so hard to have. And we want to marry those things and bring them together.
So I wonder if you sort of the big picture in all this, like looking at over the past, let's say 20 years or so, what kind of trends have you noticed in terms of boards and CEOs and paying attention to privacy issues and security issues and AI issues? Have you seen changes and evolution over the years in terms of how they perceive these issues, how much time they spend with these issues?
Yeah, so let me start with sort of a timeline on those three different areas. So with respect to cyber, we started seeing this creeping into the boardroom after, in the retail space, major data breaches involving our retailer community in the mid-2000s, 2012, 2013, 2014. So on catastrophic issues, we would see reporting to the board. Increasingly, especially with the SEC cyber rule for public companies, and also a focus in Europe on accountability from management bodies, which include CEOs and board members, and also some of the things that we've seen on the regulatory landscape here in the US with FTC enforcement actions, such as Drizzly, which have named the CEO, in particular. when we start seeing those things, there's been a greater conversation around cyber preparedness and cyber governance now in the boardroom. And I think really that evolution of the preparedness and governance and looking at the legal landscape for cyber is really just started in the last couple of, maybe 24 months, last couple of years. On the privacy side, that is a much more recent development, because although there are 161 countries with data privacy laws plus around the world, interestingly enough, data privacy often not discussed in the boardroom. And that omission or that lack of discussion, I believe, led to a loss of 1.4 trillion with the T in market cap for companies that were listed on NASDAQ in 2022. So once it hit revenue, right around then, and then it's also in connection with last year, some of the largest fines came out, but the focus really is on the revenue. When you start seeing market cap impacted, that's when it becomes a board topic. And that's where we're starting to see privacy come in. Now, with AI, it's already in the boardroom. Most companies have had boards briefed already, started to get tech briefings on AI. So I'm excited about that evolution. And we're also seeing a discussion around governance happening sooner for the boards as AI emerges. So I'm excited about how those trends are moving more quickly.
So what you mentioned how much was lost by not paying enough attention to privacy, and I'm wondering at broad level, you have a thought on why? Why is the failure to focus on privacy costly?
Yes. So the biggest risk is actually not the fines that companies will face or may face down the road, although we are seeing increasing fines and other things, 9-figure fines, billion-dollar fines coming out of the US on privacy issues. But the fines are not really the reason for movement. The reason for movement is the loss in revenue. And let me just give you an example. One major social media company came into their earnings call in 2023 having to say that they lost 10 billion in ad revenue the year prior. That caused a $300 billion sale off of stock. It also, by the end of the year, that company had lost 800 billion in market cap. Why is that important? Because one of their competitors, another company, I'm trying not to use company names here, but another competitor had stepped forward and approached privacy proactively, started marketing about how well they were taking care of protecting privacy, and consumer trust and privacy were very important to that company. And they used that as a market differentiator. And what happens and what we saw was that the first mover, the early adopter of the privacy proactive stance, ended up with market cap of over $3 trillion, doing great, while the other one was struggling. Now, AI is going to be a big equalizer here. There's an opportunity to start over because so many things are going to be powered by AI. So getting the privacy story right this time, getting the cyber story correct this time will go a long way towards ensuring the trust that is necessary to be a successful company.
So I have a thesis, and I wonder if you agree or disagree with it. But this is it. So in the early 2000s, privacy, I think early on, because I was around even before the early 2000s thinking about privacy. Privacy and security was a part of privacy, and data breach notification comes out of privacy's overcoat. But when we see after the Choice Point breach in 2005, security kind of takes off, and it gets mostly into IT. Privacy is kind of more on the periphery. The money goes into security. The focus goes into security. Security budgets go, and privacy budgets kind of stay flat. So security kind of goes off and launches into outer space, and privacy, on the other hand, is left behind. Now, we're seeing another moment now, and there's always been talk about how privacy and security should go hand in hand, and they are, two sides of the same coin, which is something I've been pushing a lot. But still, the reality has been that security and privacy, there's still silos, and security has gotten just tons more attention and resources, time, especially at upper management than privacy has. AI is an interesting story, because what will happen with AI? Will it be the same story where AI just takes off into its own and privacy is left in the dust? Or will AI, will privacy, this time hang on and be in the rocket ship? And I'm curious your thoughts on, one, is that, what do you think about the story that I've told? And then two, is privacy now going to be, is it going to be deja vu all over again, or is privacy going to, take off with AI?
So a couple things. First of all, I completely agree with your analysis in terms of cyber and privacy, and the discussions that were happening, briefings that happen in the boardroom, to the degree they do happen, have happened primarily by CISOs informing the board. What we've seen is, over time, that put incredible pressure on our CISO community, as we're seeing now with certain criminal prosecutions and et cetera, and not giving the full breadth of support to our CISO community, because CISOs are not necessarily their job to survey laws in 161 countries and talk about requirements and legal requirements that ultimately the companies are subject to, that can lead to the impacts on market cap, right? It's not the CISO's necessary responsibility to learn, the 90s, there's legal frameworks and draft legislation on AI, for example, right now in 97 countries and 6 continents. I had a chance to review that in the book and thereafter. But the reality is that that's a lot to ask our CISO community to adopt. So CISOs need to be surrounded. They also are not necessarily looking at, all right, these data collection and sharing requirements or biometrics, et cetera. And it's very important that we surround the CISO with the proper support to be able to get the board the full reporting that's necessary to make the strategic decisions that they need to make. Let me just put it a different way and just break it down. Would a board make the decision if they knew compliance in 2013 for a social media company for privacy would cost maybe $5 million for a large tech company? Would they make that decision not to invest in that, and rather, fight the European governments, fight a bunch of other governments, and end up still losing 800 billion in market cap without changing the law one iota? Or if the board had been informed, hey, this is what is at stake, this is where we're growing, and this is what the expense is to unlock the innovation, would they have made that choice? And that's what we have to be fair to our boards, to get them the accurate information so that a proper strategic decision-making can occur. Right now, in the absence of briefings and in the absence of information, certain decisions are being made by default, which may not actually comport with what the board would have done had they been briefed initially with what the decisions constitute that they're making. So I try to make that concrete, because looking in the rearview mirror, of course, you can always say a board maybe on principle would want to fight the Europeans for 10 years, and still lose 800 billion in market cap and have to incur a lot of layoffs and sell real estate and so forth just to get back on track. But many board members might make a different decision. And that's what the book is about, to help just cut through the silos and get the information directly to the CEOs and board members.
Yeah, and I wonder, I do think it was a real lost opportunity, when security and privacy kind of splintered, and the boards security took so much focus and privacy was, I think, neglected by a lot of companies at that level. And I've always been pushing for, hey, you got to pay attention to this. But one challenge with this is translating this into the language that the board and the CEO will understand. And I think that's part of your project in this book is, how do you talk about that? Security is easier because it's expensive and it costs, and you can see the damage right away. Like, oh my gosh, a data breach! Look at the horrors that happen. Privacy is a little bit more complicated because it's more mushy. It depends. Its costs are less direct. So how do you talk to a board about privacy? What do you say that would resonate with them to get them to understand this issue?
Well, I think when boards are given perspective, that is very helpful. So framing issues in terms of market cap wins and market cap losses are very helpful. Companies that are proactive in the space of privacy, a couple of them have just broken the $3 trillion market cap barrier, and they've made their privacy focus a brand differentiator. They use it in commercials, they use it in how they interact with consumers, and that's very popular. The companies that have been known for privacy lapses are not trusted, and those companies that are least trusted, and we can think of some now, one of the social media companies has one of the lowest trust monikers, has literally right now a zero market cap, 0.00. So, and it may not be important whether there's revenue or not, and there might be different reasons for doing different things. But many companies want to be on the plus side of market cap and revenue. So first, framing the discussion to what it means value-wise, market-wise for the company is critical. The second thing is, with respect to privacy and its relevance, I want to use AI here to broach that topic, because AI is going to be in every single part of our lives. We are just getting going. We are in the very initial stages of how this technology is going to literally transform everything we're doing. Already, we're starting to see many of the things that you use on the daily are being powered by or upgraded by AI. Okay, so it's very important to realize that in these 97 countries and 6 continents, for high-risk AI, continuous testing, monitoring, and auditing has been embedded in the legal and regulatory frameworks in 6 continents and 97 countries. So every second of every minute of every day, they're calling for continuous testing in 7 verticals that are the most critical, most probable to cause harm to people, either physical or emotional. And one of those 7 components for testing is privacy. Privacy is front and center there. So every privacy professional listening to this, if AI, first of all, you should assume AI is going on in your company. And if you're not a member of the AI governance team or not privy to what's going on, you must get yourself into that conversation by injecting yourself and anchoring it here on the trends that are discussed in the book. And you can also go to my book website, which is just my name, DominiqueSheltonLeipzig.com. There's a global legal frameworks tab, and all 97 links are there. And they all call for privacy testing. So you must interject yourself into that conversation, because otherwise the company's flank is going to be open. In a couple of years, when these laws start being enforced, the companies are going to be way far behind. And let me just say something else and then turn it back to you, Dan. You don't even have to wait for the laws to be enforced. We're already seeing the FTC and their most recent enforcement order with a retail pharmacy recently, having to do with their AI misidentifying paying and lawful customers as shoplifters. That company's in bankruptcy at the moment, but in the order, it's important to see where they talk about in the complaint that the AI, there was not continuous testing monitoring and auditing, and they brought up the privacy issue. So we don't need to wait for the laws to be enforced and enacted for companies and the privacy professionals listening here to jump into the AI dialogue immediately to ensure that they're not left behind.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice, and generally, I think there's been an issue that I've heard a lot and spoken to a lot of people about in the privacy profession about how far can a privacy officer advance in a company? Kind of is there a ceiling to the importance of a privacy officer or the privacy team? And I think one challenge is, privacy might be seen as a cost center or a center of no, or a center of, be cautious and move slower. And all that, seems to be not like a generation of money or innovation. It's a headwind. And, the privacy officer, despite the title of chief, is not the same as the other members of the C-suite. And I'm wondering, do you see a change in that? Do you see a way that privacy officers can get more power and influence within a company, and start to perhaps, advance that position, higher in the ranking?
So I talk about this in the book as well. It's very important for our privacy officer community to bring themselves into community with their CEO and with their board. Whoever in the organization, whether it's the audit committee or if there's a special data committee at the board level or a technology committee at the board level, the privacy officer needs to ensure that they're presenting what they know about opportunities that can be seized and innovation that can be unlocked if privacy protective tools are implemented. So that reporting needs to occur. The privacy officer needs to find their voice and put themselves on the agenda. Okay, that's thing number one. When they get on the agenda, it's very important to your other question, Dan, that you learn how to talk to the board. Take all the detail that we think of, and I'm the biggest privacy nerd of the nerdist. I mean, I just love getting into all the details. But when you come before the board, that's not the remit. The remit is not to inundate them with every alphabet soup detail that we do know and we can nerd out at various conferences that we attend, your conference, Dan, and really have fun with each other. But when you're talking to the board, you need to take everything up about 3 levels and say, why is this important to the strategy of the company, the business operations, or financial revenue? So frame the conversation starting at that highest level of call it the ladder of abstraction, but the highest level of importance. And then you talk to the board about how you get things accomplished. So if it's the goal is to unlock innovation with our AI and not have headlines that get in the way of that growth, how do we get there? We insert the privacy guardrails and develop the test so that we can be alerted if our AI is misidentifying people, for example, or using information that is not considered to be privacy protective on images, so that we don't end up with a 5-year consent decree like what happened to the retail pharmacy and unable to use AI and being banned for it and getting behind the 8 ball with our overall goal of unlocking the innovation. You see what I'm saying? You've got to tell the board why this is important for them to stop and take stock right now, because we're literally sitting with the situation because of the FTC's enforcement order where one company wanting to get into the AI game is now banned from, has to stay out of it for 5 years, which is not good for anybody.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice, and especially I think that the toughest thing for speaking to a board, it's very different than a professor, because everything I do as a professor is the total opposite of that. Long-winded, detailed answers that are all over the place, and it depends, and Obviously, I think for the board, succinct, direct, and really pointed at those issues. And I think you really encapsulate very well, the what they want to focus on and how to speak to them. And I think it's important that privacy professionals learn, how to interact and talk with the board, and hopefully we'll get more of an opportunity to be heard by the board. I also think with AI, what's exciting about it is, it is affecting everything. The money at stake is tremendous. There's a big innovation side to it, and privacy is very central to it, as you mentioned. And it does, it's a big hurdle to deal with. You have to kind of address privacy and go through privacy if you want to do things with AI, and it's inescapable. So I don't think that privacy can just be ignored as a cost after the fact, like just move fast, break things, and then pay the privacy speeding tickets later on. I think that privacy could really impede, or being bad about privacy could really impede the development of AI and the use of AI by companies. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think that's consistent with what you were saying.
Yes, it is absolutely consistent, and I do agree. And it has privacy is going to have these impacts. First, the testing, monitoring, and auditing that's required will be required under the EU AI Act, and also, and like I said, 70 other countries that have similar frameworks, either in legislation or already issued by regulators. They're expecting privacy guardrails, and they're expecting companies to be able to know when they are that they have rights to use data, especially AI that's going to involve sensitive data, race, gender, everything in GDPR Article 9, sexual orientation. All of those things are going to be considered high risk AI, and they're right from the get go when you're training your application, whether you are the using as a licensee, you're using AI for a high risk purpose. If you're creating an application, your own company's application to sit on top of a large language model, they're expecting that you have IP and privacy rights to be able to train the data with what you're training it on. That's number one. Number two, in terms of the continuous testing, auditing, and monitoring, that means code, and this is different than what we saw with other privacy laws, GDPR, CCPA, our whole alphabet soup, did not marry technical requirements with the legislative goals, right? They left it up to companies to be able to sort of self-certify, this is my privacy program. With AI, it's different. They've built in technology guardrails to be imposed by companies into the legislation itself. Why do they do that? The reason they do this is for generative AI, there's a phenomenon called model drift. It means models infused by the whole wide internet and roiling amount of data. We're developing 2.5 quintillion bytes of data per day with all of our mobile apps and uses, and et cetera. So that's 2.5 quintillion bytes of data per day, 18 zeros behind it. Much of that is pouring into our internet uses, et cetera. So we have this roiling amount of data that helps us get greater insights when we use a large language model to fuel a proprietary app sitting on top. But the reality is we have to understand that with that roiling data, the technology does not stay static. I've talked to many large language model experts, computer scientists, and they tell us there's just not a generative AI right now that stays in one place. So if you're testing quarterly or annually on privacy, you could be having all kinds of privacy violations occurring in the interim. So you don't want that. And that's what has to be explained to companies. So that is a way for privacy professionals to be involved when there are high risk use cases. There's 142 of them that we know about, and every privacy professional should know what those are. That's when the privacy professional's voice is going to be important to help develop the guardrails, which will be translated into code into the AI tool so that the company can be aware when it's misidentifying customers as shoplifters, rather than have enforcement be the vehicle for awareness.
So I think you've already covered my next question a little bit, but I'd still like to kind of maybe pull things together. So, if you're the privacy officer and CEO calls you in and you make the case, it's important. We need to get ahead of this, and then say, what do you want? Give me your wish list of all the things you want. Because I'm ready to spend. I'm ready to do something. What should the privacy officer say? Like, what would be the best answer if they get a yes? We're ready to. We agree. What actual things on the ground? More people. More obviously more money. But is there anything else concretely that a privacy officer could ask for that would then support, assuming a company is ready to go all in? Okay, the big ask is, okay, now you got to ask for stuff if the wallet is opened up.
Yeah. So first, I would be asking to be united with and coordinating with the chief innovation officer or the chief information officer or the chief technology officer, whoever is involved with the innovation in the company. Privacy wants to be, aligned with that group, and a coordinated approach coming from the CEO as well as whatever oversight committee at the board level, say it's the audit committee that's reviewing oversight, there needs to be clear alignment that the privacy office is going to be working hand in hand with the innovation team. And you mentioned earlier, like, move fast and break things. I remember that mantra from Web 1.0 and 2.0. And what I use in the book, Trust, I say move fast with trust. So privacy officers have been doing privacy for a long time. You guys know how to move things quickly. Those of you listening who've done a number of assessments, done product work, have looked at counseling for different services, and it's particularly as more and more things are going to be fueled by AI, you can move quickly. And it has to be a solutions-driven approach, not a no, I'm afraid, so we're not going to do it, but how do we do it so that we protect consumer privacy and then move quickly to innovation. So getting into an innovation mindset and a solutions mindset is very important.
So I'm wondering, with AI, do you think that things are going to be pretty much dominated by AI in the future? That basically privacy will be like a sub issue of AI. What's going to happen to, I guess, I think for a long time it was a two-ring circus: privacy and data security. Now it's a three-ring circus with AI, privacy, and data security. And I'm wondering, how these will relate to each other, and how data security fits into this mix too, because they're different. They overlap a lot. Privacy is an issue with AI, but it's still there's also privacy without AI. And I'm wondering your thoughts on what happens to that. Will everything just be AI, and the only way we get any attention to privacy is by talking about AI?
No, I think privacy has been getting more and more attention because of, as I mentioned, the major fines that have been coming out of Europe and also in the US, and also the repeated attention that consumers and people are devoting to privacy increasingly. So there's an awareness that this is important to people. And so companies are making a point to be more privacy proactive, at least to start adopting approaches to try to bring the operations of the company more in alignment with what consumers want. So privacy is not going to go away. AI, I do think, is dominating the conversation right now. It's not that the technology is new, but the generative AI being commercialized is what is new over the past year, and it's really just captured 3/4 of the headlines as you deal with data. The other thing we're already seeing is that when it comes to cyber attacks, deep fakes are going to be a really big issue. A lot of those are fueled at scale with AI. we've already seen attacks where CEOs have been impersonated, board members have been impersonated on videos like this with mimicked audio, so it sounds like them, it looks like them. And I think there was just recently a public situation where millions of dollars were wired out. We've certainly seen those issues come up in the clients that we represent. So it's going to change. AI is a little bit, to me, like one of my partners used this, like the electricity of yesterday, that it's just going to change things so fundamentally and pretty much everything that we're doing. So I wouldn't think of like AI as this separate thing and privacy and cyber. It's just that this is a new technology that's going to be infused in pretty much every part of our lives. And so that privacy issues increasingly and the cyber issues increasingly are going to articulate themselves in the context of AI, just very similar to when cell phones came afoot, and then you have the analog phones. It's not that those issues, the telecom issues, didn't exist. It's just that they start migrating to this new technology. So that's the way I would look at this transition moment right now. But there's a lot of other things besides privacy and cyber in AI. Questions of bias, IP rights, very big issues, accuracy. We hear about AI hallucinating or accuracy, health and safety when you're looking at AI for drug development or car manufacturing or any other manufacturing plant. Those are all considered high-risk use cases that I just ticked off here. And those are things that regulators and companies from brand point of view are going to want to pay attention to.
So we talked a lot about inside the company, but I wonder outside. I mean, you're outside counsel, and without giving away all your secrets, what advice would you have for outside counsel for their clients to tell them about this, to talk to the board? Will they have interaction with the board? Should they have interaction with the board or CEO? So basically, kind of like what do things look like from the perspective of outside counsel, and what should they be doing? And you don't have to give away everything that you do, but it'd be good to just get a picture of what that looks like.
So there are, first of all, for outside counsel, I would say it's important to be aware of other trends when third-party advisors have been brought into the board, in the boardroom or in the C-suite at other inflection points. So think of SOX, for example. When that was new, boards got advice about that because they need to understand how to navigate that new landscape. Similarly, that's already happening with AI. Boards are getting briefed on AI. Boards are getting briefed on how cyber needs to be addressed in this context, and also privacy. So you want to be part of that discussion, making sure you're part of the briefing, because there is context. And let me just say, at least from the legal standpoint, the consultants in the room, the other board advisors may not have at their fingertips the breadth of knowledge that the legal team has in order to look around corners as it relates to the magnitude of legislation and regulations in all of this space. Just on AI alone, I mentioned 97 countries, 6 continents, thousands of pages of draft legislation, regulatory frameworks. You need somebody to distill this down to what are the things that are in common in all of these areas. And we've done that with at Mayor Brown. We've done that and got it down to 6 things that, from a governance standpoint, all of these various frameworks are calling for. We have a bunch of cyber laws just popping up, and executive orders and so forth happening in the US and in the EU, for cyber in particular. So boards need to be briefed on those things, especially if they're operating in those jurisdictions and might find themselves on the other side of legal requirements without knowing it. So giving the board a good briefing on the legal landscape that's relevant to them without a lot of, when I say good briefing, just a lay of the land. We're subject to regulation in these 7 jurisdictions that we're doing business in. We're required to have data inventory and legal risk assessments in these jurisdictions. And this is why we're here briefing you. just being very clear with the board about what their obligations are, and the same thing with privacy. So I'm excited for the role that your listeners will play in the boardroom, because there is definitely a need. We're seeing that and before I turn it back to you, Dan, we're seeing right now, we're in proxy season. Okay. There have already been proxy proposals by the AFL-CIO for 2 public companies to require voting from all the shareholders on whether or not there should be AI assessments performed by the company that are posted on the company's websites that include a discussion of board oversight. That's just one example. And those companies pushed back, and the SEC said, nope, those have to be heard at the proxy, and we'll see what happens. But my guess is those votes will be successful. And so if it happens in those 2 public companies, it's going to be happening everywhere with transparency around board oversight of AI. We already see in the cyber context with New York DFS, for example, looking at CEOs and boards approving policies as it relates to cyber, and also getting third-party advisors in if they don't have the requisite knowledge themselves to be able to pose questions about cyber reporting. So this is going to be more and more normalized as we move on in the years ahead.
So one thing that you did that is really unusual, that got you ready to get into this so deeply and write this book, is that you spent a lot of time learning about boards and about CEOs and about what these folks do and how they think and how they approach issues. What can people do, both internally, externally, anyone who wants to intersect with the board? Obviously, read your book, because it is the best source for privacy and security AI for boards, but just general knowledge about learning about how to communicate with them, how to speak their language, how to better get up to be able to speak to them. How did you get this knowledge? How'd you kind of break into this world?
Well, it really was a personal journey, I'll say. And Dan, thank you for asking, and I'm happy to be transparent about it. So in 2019, when I was very honored to represent the California Chamber of Commerce in their negotiations, and I was working with the CEO at that time to basically negotiate to get the business-friendly terms into the CPRA that was being enacted to amend CCPA. And it was through that process, and I was reporting out to the board of the California Chamber of Commerce. I worked on my first book, which was called Transform, in order to be able to have a takeaway for that meeting, so that the boards would, I could put up on the slide, if you want to read more, read my book. But during the pandemic, I had the occasion to go deeper, trained with Jan Babiak, who has a company. She's the chair of the audit committee for Walgreens. She has a company called JBC LLC, where she does take on certain mentees for a fee, of course, but to actually learn about the boardroom and board governance, and also I was also personally interested in potentially becoming a board member for a for-profit company myself. So there was a journey there. And then I went and got certified in board governance from the UCLA Anderson School of Business with other board members. And I, sat Zoom square by Zoom square, side by side with CEOs and board members that were existing already, to go through their training and understand what they were learning. And then I did immediately following that a 7-month program through the Berkeley Next Gen Directors Program that's put on by Keith Myers, who heads the CEO and board practice over at Major Lindsay in Africa right now. But anyway, I did that Next Gen Directors Program led by a number of CEOs and board members, working with private equity, Bain Capital, and so forth, going through mock exercises. And what struck me in that process is, after all of that training, what struck me was probably over 1,000 hours of training. Privacy and security came up. There was a 2-hour security course in one session and a half hour in another. And only in the 2-hour security course, there are 2 bullets on privacy. And now I know a lot more is being done with AI, but still. So it struck me like, wow, this is a missing issue. It's not even being discussed in the training. And that's because the people that know the most about it are just not taking the step to actually learn the board governance piece. So that part is very helpful to just be able to understand the boardroom. I also understood in listening and going through the trainings that, wow, the privacy professionals are speaking a different language than our board and our CEO community. So just understanding how to be succinct, start with the bottom line of why this is important first, and then take it down to a few examples and finish the point is a different way of speaking, and we have to learn it, especially those of us who have been in privacy so long. We go from the detail first and then go up to why it's important. We need to start off with why it's important and then get down to a reasonable but very high level of detail.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because there's sort of 2 levels to it. One, just getting in the door to even be heard. Takes some work, but we have, I think AI is a nice, it's a nice tailwind, right? It's really helping open some of those doors and get that possibility to happen. But then when you get in the door, you got to make the most of the moment, right? And that's why learning how they talk, learning how to make these points and how to drive home the message in a way that they're going to understand and that's going to resonate and that they'll respond to is really important, because it's taken this long to finally get that door open and get in there. But if you're in the room and it's not effective and the message is not going to be heard, then what a wasted opportunity. But those are the 2 hurdles, as getting to that spot and then getting in the door.
I will say one thing there, Dan, just to pick up on this. For those of you listening, and for you, Dan, to understand, your CEO and board community want to hear from you. They do. To a person, to a CEO, to a board member, they lean over they're curious and concerned about privacy, cyber, AI, and how to find solutions. So I think really starting to frame the discussion when you do have the moment to talk with the board members or the CEO, to frame the discussion, very important, problematic solution. Here's the issue. This is how it affects our business strategy, and here's how we solve it. Okay, that's very important, rather than throwing up sort of the alphabet soup of the trends and everything, because it's too much for your executives to digest. But it's like, the issue is we have this great technology that we're about to deploy, and we're using and we're training on personal data that might create liability down the road and prevent us from operating this chatbot or whatever. And so in order to solve for that, we can do that by introducing synthetic data, or we can do that by getting permission from our members, and then we can proceed quickly. Or we can do that by eliminating that data and finding a proxy. So you've got to come in, and that's why I want to see the privacy team interact with the innovation team, so that you're coming to a solutions mindset. You're not just coming into the board and raising a problem, because you won't be invited back if that's the case. And then the other thing, on a positive side, I am so excited. This year is the 2nd annual Digital Trust Summit that I'm hosting. And I told you about the last one last year. It's so exciting. Last year we had 62 CEOs and board members come. This year, I'm excited. We have, the room could hold 125. We now have 155 CEOs and board members who have signed up, ready, want to learn, etc. So I think that there's this tremendous thirst to have a day or 2 devoted to digital solutions, and that's what we're doing. And it's not like I knew everybody personally or anything. It's just creating the platform where we can have cogent discussions about important issues as it relates to data, because they're reading the same headlines that you are.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, is there any difference between the things you would tell the CEO versus the board? Any difference in topic or level of detail or anything, or are they roughly the same?
They're roughly the same in terms of the oversight role. So the CEO is responsible for managing the business and the team, but frankly, let's call it honestly, for our public companies and our bigger private equity or late stage companies, the CEO is not going to have their finger on every single thing. They're delegating, and they need to know what questions to ask in order to uh, drive home the innovation, make sure that the innovation isn't interrupted with any kind of brand tarnishing activities. So that they're really in an oversight role. The board oversees, hires. The most important thing they do is hire and fire the CEO first, but also they're responsible for oversight of the strategy, making sure that the CEO, is involved in the day to day, that the CEO is also keeping sight on the long term strategy, the overall business plan, and that they're driving those initiatives forward. So they have a longer term view. For purposes like what we talk about at the Digital Trust Summit is oversight in general. What questions right now can the CEO go back into their environment and ask to drive the innovation forward while enhancing trust? And you're only going to enhance trust when a company is trustworthy. That means not in headlines about X, Y, or Z as it relates to mishandling or allegations of inappropriate use of data. So we've got to get to a titrated control situation where humans control the AI, humans control the privacy conversation, and humans get on top of the cyber issues. And the way to do that is the governance, which our privacy professionals know so much about.
Yeah, and actually, I'm wondering, how should the privacy officer work with the CISO and CIO at this level? Should they all be in the room together? Should they all kind of have a strategic meeting before? So how do they all get along and kind of, I guess, everyone both stay in their respective lanes, but also collaborate? What's the vision, between these folks?
Collaboration is going to be essential for the successful launch of any AI initiative in a company. It's just essential. This is a cross-disciplinary effort to surround the technology and make sure it's doing exactly what the company wants it to do, that it's being amazing, and not the other way around. So it is a team sport. You have to cut through the silos, cut through the territorialism going on, and get right to the heart of making sure the AI is amazing for the company. Sitting as the privacy office, what's nice is that you can, let's just use the EU AI Act as an example. And this step that I talked about, continuous, every second of every minute of every day, testing, monitoring, and auditing of AI in one vertical is privacy, and another separate vertical is cybersecurity. So every high risk use case, first of all, you got to know what the high risk use cases are, understand there's 141 of them, everything you would expect: financial, health, critical infrastructure, manufacturing, vocational, HR, etc. You can download a free copy of the book that has many of them in there, but you should know all 141 that are out there right now, so that you can know if you're in a high risk AI use case, and then get with the team and start saying, okay, here are the guardrails. Let me give you an example to make this concrete in a low risk situation, why team sport stuff is so important when it comes to AI. Just last month, now I guess 2 months ago, mid-January, a logistics company that takes care of, in London, that takes care of package delivery, and is a very well-known company, very similar to our big logistics companies, implemented a chatbot so they could tell customers, customers could check if their package had been picked up, if it had been delivered yet, where it was, and so forth. And through the use of the chatbot, which was really effective, they were able to reduce headcount at the customer call center and so forth, and move those those resources and employees to other projects that were going to be improving productivity and logistics for the company. The CEO wakes up mid-January to their name trending on X, formerly Twitter, because a customer jumped on to Twitter with a video after many others had experienced the same thing, with the chatbot cursing at the customers and complaining that the company was the worst logistic company in the world and had fired all of its customer employees, and so therefore customer relations employees, so therefore it can't tell. And the chatbot was, impotent to tell customers where the packages were, and they didn't have any real service reps to do it either. That's the kind of thing that is totally avoidable, totally, if silos are broken down and a cross-disciplinary team gets together. What do I mean by that? I mean that there's somebody in the company already that was training call center people ahead of time. Before AI came to make it quicker, somebody did that work. It has to be understood that that subject matter expert needs to be brought into the dialogue to say, what are the guardrails? What do we tell our customer service employees to do when they are live? Well, we say, start with please and thank you, and not get angry with the customers, and certainly cursing's off limits. The way to translate that into a guardrail, for example, for that chatbot would be to insert code into the AI application and turn what I just mentioned, please, into zeros, and thank yous into twos, and curse words in any language that you're doing business in to like no-fly zone 10s or 7s or whatever, so that the company can be alerted when the AI starts to drift, not if, but when the AI drifts and goes into areas that are outside of the company's guardrails, that a human can be alerted on the AI team that, it won't stop, a guardrail will not stop the chatbot from cursing at the first customer, but it will allow the company to know when it happens first, rather than a tsunami of customers being insulted and the company feeling like they have to disable the whole chatbot and scramble to get customer service in place. So we have to just be focused on what is at hand and how teams can work together. So the AI team needs to have privacy, cyber, and governance and innovation all together.
Well, that's really a great example. I think a great way to end. We are at the end of the hour already. We could go on for longer. This has been really interesting and informative. Another quick plug for the book, Trust. It's a great book. It's very interesting. It covers a lot of what we talked about and more. A lot of really interesting details here. So I encourage you to get this book and read it. And thank you so much for joining us. I'm really glad we had this conversation.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm really glad to be here, and thanks for giving time to Trust.